Раді вітати вас на лабораторії створення документальних VR-фільмів, яка народилася у Харкові, як фестиваль Docudays. Мене звати Оксана Сигрева, я кураторка лабораторії. Поруч зі мною Марія Степанюк, яка є координаторкою.
Ми дуже раді, що саме Docudays доєднався до її реалізації, як місце сили документалістів країни. Саме для них ми створили цю лабораторію, але насправді вона буде доречна спеціалістам з різних сфер.
Лабораторія пропонує 6 кроків зі створення VR-фільмів, від розробки історії до промоції та дистрибуції. Для цього ми запросили 6 спеціалістів прочитати лекції на прикладах з їх практики. Головна задача лабораторії – розширити інструментарій документального кіно через залучення можливостей віртуальної реальності.
Ми сподіваємось, що прослухавши всі лекції, вам буде легше йти на територію VR, і після лабораторії з'явиться більше історій віртуальної реальності.
Сьогодні з нами Астрід Kahmke, кураторка проєктів імерсивного мистецтва, консультантка, продюсерка. З 2016 року Астрід займається розбудовою інфраструктури індустрії XR Баварії. Вона займала посаду креативної директорки Баварського центру кіно і є співзасновницею фестивалю Virtual Worlds у Мюнхені.
В своїй лекції «Розбудова VR-інфраструктури» Астрід зосередиться на питаннях нетворкінгу, можливостей обміну знаннями, співпраці, копродукції та фінансування у молодій VR-спільноті. Протягом лекції ви можете ставити питання в чатах. У нас буде час розібрати їх після лекції, а ті, хто присутні в Zoom, матимуть можливість задати питання наживо. Вітаємо, Астрід!
So, hello everybody. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Oksana, for having me. Hello everybody in the Visual Arts Academy in the Ukraine. I feel very, very honored to be part of that great VR Doc Lab. And I'm really excited to talk about infrastructure, about ecosystem, and how to build your community and how to collaborate to be successful in this really complex world of immersive narratives. My name is Astrid Kahmke. I'm living in Munich, and my background is film producer, and I was working in the field of storytelling for the last, let's say, 30, 35 years, beginning in theater, performing arts, and then eventually transforming to television and international feature films. And I stopped producing feature films in 2013 and changed to a startup incubator called Bavarian Film Center. And this is where the journey in VR began for me and for my life. And I want to share some thoughts with you about how to build up an infrastructure, what's needed for artists and creators to work in that, as I said, really complex and complicated world of the innovative technologies. Pavel, could you switch to the first slide, please? So, no, the one before. The first one. Yes, that one. Thank you. I was thinking, preparing that lesson, I was thinking of what does it take to, or what does it need to work successfully or to grow in a new structure. And for me, it's the same no matter what kind of art you're working in or what medium you're working in. You need certain pillars you can rely on. And the first one is, of course, education and training. So you need to learn the field of expertise. You need to study. You need an academy. You need schools, trainings, labs to get access to the knowledge at all. And then during the training, or maybe after that, you need collaborations and partnerships because you can't do anything alone. Nobody is a singular artist, in my opinion. So you need people you can share your ideas, you can collaborate, and you can find partners on every level, meaning creative level, financing level, distributional level, but you can't do it on your own, the whole workflow mostly. That leads me to, of course, science and research. So that's strongly connected with education and training, that you hopefully have contact to universities or researchers, scientists close to the field you're working on. In VR, that's of course technology, but it's also, of course, neuroscience, medical expertise, psychology. So different fields of expertise you should have access to, or you should implement into your network. Once you have an idea to create for development and production, you need the whole structure for that. You need the workflow, the technology, you need the team skills, you need people who are capable to work with you in that same team. That means that you also need funding and financing. You need a structure, if not a governmental funding, maybe you find private equity, or you start a Kickstarter campaign, or you find institutional partners to help you to finance your project, and of course to pay your team and the technology you need. That helps if you have international support or governmental support and institutional support. That means that you can't do it on your own, but it's good maybe to work with an academy or an institution that has access to technology or hardware you can rent for a while, or you can collaborate with. There are many, many examples for collaborations between universities and tech companies and artists, especially in the field of immersive media. Industry network and international relationships is something that should be thought of very early on as well. It starts with expertise, but it's also very important to create international relationships, to see what's going on in other communities and worldwide, and to maybe invite experts or people who already experienced something in that field. So very much like here, VR Doc Lab is doing that, to invite people who are working in the field of VR already and share their experience and their best practices. And at least if you're produce something, you will need a way to distribute and publish your work. Otherwise, nobody will have access to it. And distribution and publishing means in VR that you need possibly a festival or a space where you can present it. You need the technology. You need people who help non-VR users to get to their first experience. So there's a lot to do in VR to create the whole ecosystem until you finally have a place where you know, I can start my idea here. I get the knowledge and the technology on the other place. I know where to fund my project, and I know with whom I can realize my project. And in the end, I know who will see it at least. So these are the pillars I know now. When we started in 2013, I didn't know about that. And it was not my field of expertise at all to be a community builder or to build an infrastructure. As said, my life was being a film producer. I created experiences in film. I was a storyteller, and I started to work for the Bavarian Film Center. Could you switch to the next slide, please? The Bavarian Film Center is still in place. It's a startup incubator in Bavaria. It's a building in first place with 30 offices. And the idea in 1991 was to support the film industry, because to rent an office in Munich is incredibly expensive and inaffordable, especially if you start your own company coming fresh from film school and you want to start to be a producer. it was really, really tricky to start your own business without that support. The Film Center provides you an office space, but also an office infrastructure. So there's a research desk. There was telephone already established, and you had a network of 39. I think they have 39 or 40 offices. And so you have other colleagues you can collaborate with and share ideas with, and all in one place, but also protected by somebody who ran the startup incubator. If you had any legal need for legal advice, for example, or you needed a workshop or something to learn on, you could ask the Film Center to organize something, especially in that field. The Film Center also ran a program, or still runs a program, that's called the First Movie Program, which was also already settled 25 years ago for first-time filmmakers. So for all those, students coming or finalizing their studies on film school, and we wanted to help them to get their first movie made, and that implemented very individual coaching and tailor-made training. Some needed more, content advice or storytelling advice. Some needed more advice in strategy and business models, or how to build your team. So the First Movie Program really was a tailor-made, or still is a tailor-made program for first-time filmmakers to help them to get their first or the second movie made. And when I started in 2013 or 14 to work and to lead the First Movie Program, we were thinking of what else is being needed outside, or what do filmmakers, producers, media professionals might need in these days. And we realized that there is a massive lack of offer in education when it comes to digital storytelling. So the whole transmedia storytelling field, or digital storytelling, new media, telling stories in the internet via mobile app, that hasn't been covered, or still is not covered, by many film schools and art schools. And we had the feeling that this is something we should provide and should nurture for those who are interested in. So we started to create further labs, like Story First, Digital Storytelling Lab, Web First, meanwhile, or we created a lab called the Writers' Room Lab, because there was a massive flow of writers' rooms, and there was a showrunners were very fancy from American series. And we said, nobody knows what's really happening in a writer's room. Nobody knows how that works. And this is obviously the place where all the magic happens, but what's going on in there? And we, for example, we found writers who worked in a writer's room already in Germany, and asked them to come as experts and share what they experienced, to offer the possibility for writers to figure out whether that's a kind of form they want to work with. Nobody knows from the beginning. Writers are usually very working singular and on their own, but maybe they figure out it's great working in a team and they're more the collaborative writer, or others might have figured out, oh, it's not for me, I can't do that in a team, I'm really a single writing person. We wanted to offer these labs and these experiences for media professionals. And what we also did is starting with different formats to address to different audiences. That was really small. I'm talking about a lab with 20 or 30 participants, so and 2 or 3 experts. And that was really something we could handle and offer in that startup incubator on our own, in our rooms. Very small, but a growing field. In 2014 is that was my personal epiphany moment when I first had a VR headset or something like a VR headset on my face. That was at DocFest Leipzig, and I met a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker called Thomas Wollner, and he already worked for Arte, which is a public broadcaster, a French-German public broadcaster, and they commissioned a work called Polar Sea, which was a web series, but also a 360 stereoscopic piece. And he had his first prototypes or a beta version at that festival, and he showed me something on the first cardboard. It was not even a VR headset, it was a first cardboard. And I really remember that moment very, very precisely, and I was totally stunned by the presence, by the feeling of presence, being in the Antarctica and feel the coast and be there. And I was thinking immediately, what does that mean for storytelling if you can look around in 360? And what does that mean if you can't control where the user or the audience is looking at? So all these first questions we all had in the beginning of immersive storytelling, I guess, is how can we control the user? How can we make that the user looks in the very exact moment we want him or her to look at in a certain angle to do so? There was thinking about VR still as if it's something coming out of the film industry and as if it's something film, but it's not. That's what we learned in the future. So next slide, please. We weren't the only ones who were asking what is storytelling in VR or what is storytelling in 360. I was so excited about that new technology that I tried to see more. And in 2014, there were no consumer devices on the market, only the chosen ones, the developers had their developer kits. So I joined meetups. The meetup culture is something that was really big in my perception at those days, especially for the new innovative formats. And there were several VR 360, even AR meetups in Munich. And I just walked in there and met a completely different network, people I never met before. From professions, I only had a blurry imagination what they are doing. They were all coming from the tech fields. They were rocket engineers, they were game designers, software developers, and they were talking about latency and motion sickness and all these technology details. And I went there because I found it really interesting, but also I had a chance to pick up a headset and watch something inside, which was really early days in the development and very polygonic and very rough. But after a while, I asked if there's anybody who is dealing with content creation, anybody who is doing storytelling in that new technology, and there were no answer at all. So I decided, no, it was not me, it was Thomas Wollner came to Munich and we had a beer together, to be honest. And he came up with the idea, let's do a hackathon. And let's figure out what that is, storytelling in VR. And so we decided with the Bavarian Film Center and with several partners just to organize that. And we had the idea, it's a small garage. We had space for 30 people. I learned what a hackathon is. And I think you all know what a hackathon is. By the way, that's a good moment maybe to address to you. If you have any questions and you want to ask me, you can address those questions in the chat. And when I see the question, I will pick it up and answer that on the run, so to say. You don't need to wait for the very end to ask your questions. So if you don't know what a hackathon is, I'm happy to explain, but I think you know. So we found partners for the hackathon. We found somebody who gave us a space that were Bavaria Film Studios, because the film center is on the compound of the Bavaria Film Studios. We asked somebody to help us with the catering. And then we just made, I think, a social media campaign, and that we do a hackathon, just write us if you want to participate. And then we were overrun. And I didn't expect that. We had more than, I think 150, nearly 200 accreditations. And we said, we can't handle that. It's too much. It's not enough space for that. And at least we had 50 participants. And we found that the participants were so incredibly interesting. Some of them already had expertise. They already shot 360. We are talking about a time where we're talking about GoPro heroes and the small camera system, and the people are printing, 3D printing their own rigs to build 6 GoPro heroes to create their own 360 camera. There were really glamorous days, and you can imagine that stitching was going to hell on those days. So the hackathon was mainly with 360 film, but we also had guests who did their first 6 Degrees of Freedom, interactive experience, and they had a HTC Vive, which was super exciting because for many of us, it was the first time we could experience interactive VR in that space. I have a short movie. I think the throwback is, if you go to the next slide, please. Don't know whether. So these are just some pictures to give you a feeling what it was. It was really a very casual 3-day hackathon. We decided to do a conference day 1 to open it for all those who cannot participate during the hackathon because we don't have enough space. But we asked, of course, everybody who was already involved and did something in VR, like Thomas Wallner, who brought his DOP, Nicolas Juliet, with him. But also, it turned out that we had a producer for Full Dome 360 movies in Munich. So he gave us a case study. We had somebody from the Leibniz Supercomputing Center. They are running a cave, a VR cave, and we were in contact with scientists suddenly. So he told us something about his field of expertise. And it was a very casual day with a full of case studies and keynotes, and everybody shared what his or her experience already was. And after that, we finished the conference day and started the hackathon and split up in teams, and decided to ideate and create a small idea that is to be prototyped until end of the next day. So 48 hours for a hackathon. If you could go to the next slide, please. I think it's just a... So this is the full group. For me, it's a class picture, the picture of the class of 2015. I know that the headshots are not really ringing a bell for you, but for me, there are a lot of people who are still working in VR, and they're running companies. Meanwhile, they're working for broadcasters and the immersive or interactive tracks there. They are producing. So this is a kind of the core of the Munich community in VR with the expertise. There's a question about hackathon going on 3D modeling and animations or only 360 shots. We were pretty open with that format. We were interested not so much in the technology. We were more interested in the way. How do we tell stories? How do we do that if you can look around and everything is, well, different than instead of going to a theater and watching a movie on screen or watching what we call now a flatty or flat movie. So the format was not, the technology was not very important. Actually, there were also a 3D, a stop motion, 360 stop motion movie in the prototyping during the hackathon. I have a very short trailer we can maybe move while I'm explaining it, so you get a bit of mood, how that felt to be in that place. Yeah, that's. You see, there were a lot of people for day one. There were also politicians interested. They came. So there were two representatives from the Ministry for Economics who find it interesting what we are doing and were interested in that new medium. We already had a few startups in Munich working in that field. So they were interested what's going on here. As we were on the film studios compound, filmmakers came and dropped by and what is that new hype thing, what's going on here. So many people were coming for the first day, for the conference day, and listening to the keynotes. And then we were only 50 and we really shot, this was a birthday shot, a 360 shot, and we really tested everything, moving 360 cameras with a lot of motion sickness involved and a lot of, it was a big failure to do that, but you learn from the failures. So could you go on, please? To make it short, we took away some learnings. The first learning is really learn to share and fail fast forward. So learn to share is a format from Lance Weiler. He is somebody, he's working in New York, and he's creating incredible labs. And one of those labs was learn to share, meaning that you have an expertise and knowledge exchange, what we did with the conference part, then do it yourself, test yourself, experiment, try to do something, which we did with the hackathon, and then share, which we did at the end of the day on Sunday evening when we presented the prototypes to everybody else in the space, what we achieved and what we tried to achieve, which is a fun part actually. And this is something that since then I'm using the learn, do, share scheme in all my labs and masterclasses and trainings, that you need to do it on your own. And no matter what result you will get, you will learn a lot by doing it on your own. And sharing is caring, of course. So share your fails, share your mistakes. They are more interesting than the good results, to be honest. And try to fail fast forward. So don't be shy. Try to do incredible things, create wild ideas, and don't be afraid to do any mistakes, because this is the way we learn. This is the way human beings learn, is by making mistakes and try to make it better the next day, the next moment. If you're running a lab like that, or if you plan doing something like that, I would recommend to create a playful and friendly, protected environment. And the focus is on protected in my experience, meaning we didn't allow any observers, for example. So after the conference days, we sent everybody away except us 50. We locked the door, we were between us, we could ask so-called stupid questions, we could do whatever we wanted to do, we could experiment, nobody evaluated what we are doing, nobody shared it on social media. It was a completely protected space, and that creates an atmosphere and an energy of non-competition and of friendliness and on eye level. That's for me the most important thing in a lab, that you create that protection that let creativity thrive. If you feel observed or evaluated, I think creativity will be suppressed. Make sure that everybody gets heard with his or her expertise. That was something I didn't expect when I planned the hackathon, but when I saw the participators list, and I thought, wow, that's so incredible. We had an Oscar winner for camera technology from ARRI on board. Thomas Warner is a 2-time Emmy awarded filmmaker, but there were people working in the audio, 3D audio already, and they worked in the field of science. And we discovered what expertise we have in that space. And we created what we called a speaker's corner, meaning in the evenings, we said the hackathon ends at 6, which is not quite a clear hackathon. I know that you can do the nights as well, but I felt too old for that, to be honest. We said we end at 6, but we keep the space open until 9 o'clock, when I recall it, so that we have 3 hours left to let them work or talk or network and share ideas. And that's what was very, very precious as well, because the participants learned to know each other very well and know where the expertise is. Offer creativity tools that let you think out of the box, though my favorite is Play-Doh. So work with Lego and Play-Doh, and with stuff that's not technology. It's something that you can do with your hands. Everybody can do with their hands. You don't need to be a super software developer to work in that field. If you have a creative idea, you need to figure out how to realize that idea. And once you know better, and once you know, then you will find a software developer who takes over certain parts, but you don't need to do it on your own. Or if you're a software developer and you have a creative idea, you might find a producer or a storyteller or a 3D animator who helps you to get the other parts together then. But for prototyping, you don't need that expertise. So you can do it with very simple things. And maybe one of the really important learnings is that innovation grows best in a multidisciplinary field. And multidisciplinary means that people have different professional backgrounds, that they come from different cultures, if possible. Maybe nations, but also working in technology is a different professional culture than working in an artistic field. So mix people, mix professions, mix the perspective, because it's incredibly interesting. What take on a certain problem or idea certain people have with their background, with their professional backgrounds. And it makes it really rich. And feed them sounds funny, but it's a clear advice. Keep the place closed and make possible that people don't need to walk away to get some food or get some drinks. So give them everything they need on location so they can really stick together and focus completely on what they're doing. As soon as you allow that they have a lunch break and go away, and even worse, if you're in the middle of a vibrant city, they will be distracted and they will separate. So try to keep the swarm together. I tell you more about that principle later about the Creators Lab. So next slide, please. This is just a reminder for me to talk to you that from this moment on, we continuously offered these formats, so that hackathon was such an success and people were so on fire. We didn't solve the storytelling problem, that's for sure, but we made it a start, and we started to ask the right questions. And as said, that this group of people were the core community in Bavaria, or part of the core community, and that was exactly the beginning. There's a question, doing some education part in the hackathon. No, that not on purpose. Of course, when you split up in teams and you have people with a different entry level of knowledge in a certain field, then of course there will be some education. We worked with somebody who already was quite experienced in 360 stitching. So he showed the other participants how to stitch and how the software works, but it wasn't a workshop or on purpose. But that's a really good question, because we started to think about that and we implemented it in the next labs. So could you go on to the next slide, please? Yeah. As the hackathon was such a success, and the ministry and the politics and the institutions kind of were awake and said, oh, that's interesting, what's going on here? Could you do more of that? We started with very casual events, small events. That was like the breakfast and wife. So you can see the inner space of the Bavarian Film Center. So that was our home, so to say. We offered some pretzels, which is a very cheap, very Bavarian food. It's like a bread. And said, okay, whoever has a wife, there were 2 or 3 companies working with 3D interactive 6DoF VR already in. One was automotive, one was educational. There was nothing in arts yet, but we invited them because they had the devices, and we said, okay, we provide the food again. We provide the food, we provide the space, come together and talk and experience. Or another one, next slide, please, was we have a big event in Munich called the Munich Creative Business Week, which is focusing on architecture and design. And what we did were, that was the year when Tilt Brush came out. And that was, for me, I thought Tilt Brush would be the killer app for VR. And we were allowed to do something in the lobby or in the lounge of the film school. So we offered 2 wives with big monitors and 2 people who helped non-VR users into the goggles and how to use the controllers, and they could start painting. And was just really very small event, but with a massive effect, because people could look, they could test, they talked to each other, and they wanted more of it. It was not, some of the next steps were some of in-house workshops for companies when broadcasters came and said, do you know anything about that? Can you tell us what that is and where we are with VR? And we have a technical university in Munich, which is very, very huge and very successful. And they organize a tech fest, which is one of the biggest in Europe. And it's not only about VR, not at all. It's a tech fest on all disciplines. And we collaborated that we are doing the VR track. So we had a small hackathon in the massive tech fest implemented with a small VR hackathon. We supported meetups, meaning the film center got some governmental funding. We just supported meetups with a bit of money or with food again, or with expertise, or sometimes we invited somebody and helped them to get a speaker. And after a while, the Augmented World Expo came to Munich. The Augmented World Expo is a private event, private organized event coming from Santa Clara, from the United States. I think the CEO is Ori Inbar. And the years I joined it in Munich were with Tom Enrich, who is meanwhile with It's Wall, so he changed, but they are both Americans. And they had these started this massive event, Augmented World Expo, and it was focusing on the United States and came to Europe. Maybe we can show the trailer muted, so I can tell you a bit about that experiment. That's the next slide. The Augmented World Expo is a conference. It's a expo space for companies, and it's very industry and tech heavy, and of course very business heavy. It's incredibly expensive for people who want to show their pieces or to have a booth in the expo. And it was governmental supported, as far as I know, because the government found it interesting to have such a huge event in Munich to, nurture the network and bring international expertise to the space. The expo was there in 2017 until 2019, and it stopped last year due to Corona, of course. I don't know about the next plans. I read that they are planning a physical event in the United States end of that year. We will see what's happening after the pandemic. So, but the World Expo was another interesting place for us to figure out who's already working in that field, what kind of startups, what kind of technical, medical progress is being made in Munich. So could you go to the next, yes, to that one. You can see what we did, and that was really an overnight action. So we joined forces, the Bavarian Film Center, and there's an umbrella called Immersive Bavaria, that was the governmental umbrella, the media network Bavaria. So several media players joined forces and that, okay, we create a booth at the Augmented World Expo to show that the creatives are already there as well, working in the field of AR and VR. And we gamified a bit. We created an app where I think you could throw pretzels or something like that. So that's why so many people were on our booth. They just played that app. Next, 2 slides maybe. Yeah, the next one again. So from meetups, the next steps was to labs and conferences. And that was the moment when the government said, okay, we want to get more of it. We want to get more professional expertise. And we created the so-called I4C conferences. I4C stands for Innovation for Content, or I4C. And these conferences were hosted by the film school in Munich, the University of Television and Film, and organized by the Bavarian Film Center. And we did exactly what we did before. We invited international experts or creators who already worked in VR and with the focus on storytelling, and asked them to come to Munich and share their wisdom with us in a conference. And there were 5 conferences already. And that's funny, when I made that slide, I could see that the last one, the colorful one already, that was 2018, marks a step into the next generation. It was more exhibition than conference than already. So after a while, the Academy of Fine Arts asked us to come and join them. And we said, okay, we will do the next conference in your beautiful space. And so we could invite more, space-consuming pieces, location-based pieces, and offer them to the audience and present them the VR pieces already made. That was very, very successful, because there is not so much possibility to watch art in VR. Even today, the access is not easy. On the next slide, you will see a bit, get a glimpse of the beauty of that space. That's the Munich residency. It was a place close to the Opera House and really in the heart of Munich and a part of the former King's Castle. Very, very stylish, beautiful space, very hot, no air conditioning. Another learning, never do VR without air conditioning in hot summers. But the space, of course, were wonderful. And there is one picture with the festival director of the Munich Film Fest, Diana Ilyin, and in the middle is Edgar Reitz, who is one of the top-notch German filmmakers. He's in his 90s already, and he was the one who asked me, can we talk about VR, please? And I was delighted to do so, and so he invited us to that space in the Academy. So the next step was, next slide, please, from conference to festival. I said that the festival director of the Munich Film Fest attended the I4C conference, and Diana Ilyin asked, could we have something for the Film Fest as a VR track? And I thought, yes, of course. Very happy to do so. And here we go, the Virtual Worlds Festival has been born. Can we have the next slide with the trailer, please? So that was a very first, very, very small, short mood trailer of the VR track of the film festival. We had our own space. We created an international competition for VR. We had France as guest of honor, so with institutional money of some institutions in France, let's say the Institut Français or the French Embassy, they could help us to finance travels from French producers, so we could offer or shine a light on the French production scheme. We had 21 experiences in the competition. We showcased the first retrospective of the works of Felix and Paul, and I think it was the first VR retrospective ever worldwide, which makes me really, really proud of. And Felix and Martin Renaud, who's talking right now, they came to Munich, or with Bianca Pomponi, to present their pieces, their beautiful VR pieces. We also had a B2B market for projects in development and, of course, a lot of networking events, all in 3 days. That was a really accumulation and a highlight of all the work being done until that day. It means that the travels, the visits of international festivals, which was my part, to travel around and visit festivals and build that network, that all fell together with that Virtual Worlds Festival. And it was a beautiful start and a really international highlight for me in Munich to present VR to everybody. The exhibition was open to everybody, and to welcome non-VR or first-time VR users and show them the beauty of the worlds and the beauty of the works already done in VR by artists worldwide. And as said, the access is still crucial and still not easy. Or we let the trailer run. You can see we had that last one was Sutu or Stuart Campbell from Australia, and he did a live painting in tilt brush during our rep party or award party. So I said we had the retrospective that was Felix Lajeunesse came to Munich. Paul is a regular a mentor in our European Creators Lab. We have a very close relationship to Felix and Paul. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview of the works we invited. You can see that this is really an international lineup of works in 2019. And I'm very proud of the international jury as well, that we could invite Myriam Marchand. She's one of these pioneering ladies worldwide, running or communicator, head of communication at the VR Phi Center and curator for VR of the Phi Center in Montreal. I hope I got it right now. She is, I think everybody knows Myriam in VR. Colm Slevin, who is head of VR AR media at Facebook, Oculus, came to Munich to be part of our jury. And wonderful Chloe Jarry, she's a producer by heart, film producer, but also VR and AR producer since 2016 already, working in that field from Paris. So we had a fabulous jury and we had awards, of course. Next slide, please. For the B2B market, which is a professional day, the professional day also, we had some keynotes. I was thinking of, if I have Colm Slevin here, he has to share his wisdom about storytelling because he's coming from film, from game, and then he changed to Facebook Oculus. So he is so wise in storytelling and knows everything. So that was a wonderful keynote. We had a panel with Myriam Marchand and Felix and Paul and some other keynotes. But also, of course, very important, a non-public space for the B2B market. So for projects in development to be presented. So you could submit your project, and we invited 12 international projects in development for the presentation. And we had more than 100 participants from different fields, museums, exhibitors, film industry, games industry, who took part in that event. And I invited also some experts in the fields, decision makers. As you can see here, a lineup of, just to give you an idea who was there, Gita Leiden is head of the Film Fund in Luxembourg. Sebastian Sorg was working for the Film Fund in Bavaria. Andrea Geipel is working for the Deutsches Museum. They are running a VR lab as well. And the Creative Europe is there, and the Bavarian Broadcasting, then Amy Seidenwurm from Oculus. And so you see a lot of industry professionals. I also already invited in advance to be part of the B2B market, to give feedback, expertise, but also to maybe be possibly partners. And that's happening. You know, people talk to each other and then they start relationships. So the next slide, please, that was local in Munich. And you saw that we invited the world to Munich and let them mingle with our local industry. Whatever we did on the Virtual Worlds Festival was with a strong focus on our local heroes who were working or are working in the field of VR. And of course, we want to help them to get their works, get visibility for their works, to help them to get an idea of what's out there already, to mingle and to collaborate with international companies. So the next slide, please. There's another initiative we started with the Bavarian Film Center in 2017 already, and that's I'm really proud of that, to be honest. That's the European Creators Lab. I said I have been sent to the world, more or less. I was allowed to travel a lot to create all these international industry networks and relationships. And part of my very privileged job was to go to festivals. And I'm really, really aware of that privilege. And I try to do the best, to get the best out of it. When I returned in 2016, 2017 from the festivals, mainly in the US and UK or in France, I realized that on the one hand, there was a massive leap forward in storytelling. They made huge progresses. The artists offered something that was really breathtaking. I thought, okay, this is a new direction and there's something happening. And this is no longer film or game or nothing in between, but this is a new art form, as Iñárritu said in his acceptance speech as well, when he got the Oscar for Carnegie Arena. So you could feel there is a vibe in the world. And on the other hand, I saw there are more or less just a few European players and actors in it. So the whole expertise seemed to come either from Asia, where HTC Vive is based, or from the US, where Oculus is being manufactured. And this is, of course, has something to do with the hardware manufacturing and with the first steps in the developments. And we thought we need to do something to help the European artists to get their feet on the ground and to discover that new medium and to get access to the new medium and to work together. So there is in the European Union, there is the Creative Europe Media Desk, and they had a call for applications for grants. And we applied with the concept of the European Creators Lab and got the grant until today. So we are recently prepping the 2021 edition. And this is where we implemented everything we learned in our former labs and our community work is. So what is the European Creators Lab about? It is a lab, it's a 5-day lab in pre-corona days. It's a 5-day lab on location. It was in Munich on our compound in the Bavarian Film Center. And we got also a soundstage, a huge soundstage from the Bavaria Film Studios that we could use. And we had a call for participation, and we asked all over Europe who wants to be part of that and explore about 5 days what is immersive storytelling, what is immersive narration. People applied and still apply without project. This is a non-competitive space, so no projects. You apply with your CV and your motivation letter. And we address to creatives, artists, producers who have already the feet on their professional ground. So they are already educated or maybe even successful in what they're doing, coming from performing arts or fine arts or filmmaking or journalism or game design or whatever, but they're working already in their field of expertise. And they might have some experience in VR already, but if not, if they're curious, that's super welcome, because that's what the lab is. It's a field for experiments and for exploration. On the other hand, so we invited between 35 and 40 participants each year from, in average, 25 nations all over Europe. So that's pretty much nearly all over Europe. But also non-European territories has been covered. I recall that one of a really close friend is coming from Minsk, and he joined the lab twice, for example. So we try to make it as diverse as possible because, as said, we know the more cultures, the more perspectives, the more professional backgrounds you have in, the more interesting it will get. On the other hand, we invite 10 to 15 mentors from international mentors with the expertise in storytelling. So we had mentors like, you can see here, that's a lineup of mentors, for example. We had Sintin Wan, who won Venice 2017. we could welcome, or we could welcome Thomas Wallner, we could welcome Paul Raphael from Felix and Paul Studios, we could welcome Hollywood director Brett Leonard in the lab. So it was a mix of different expertise and some developers to help technically. We also, the lab, we tried to build partnerships on location with in Munich and in Bavaria with the University for Television and Film, with the Leibniz Supercomputing Center, for example, with smaller companies who wanted to be involved in the lab to take part. And in the end, we had 50 to 60 people, individuals in one space, and we locked the door and threw some food in it. Now, what really happened in that space was, or still is, that we invite them to Munich. They live there for a week. The whole swarm is in one hotel, in one space together. So we really try to keep the group together and let them from hotel to the soundstage, to the lab space. They can go together. They can go together home. They have drink at the bar. So they spend a lot of time together, and the group didn't fall apart, which is easy in summer in Munich, you know, but we really try to keep them together. The first 2 days of the lab is learn, knowledge transfer. So we ask our mentors to share their wisdom. It might be a keynote, a case study, to talk about their latest work, to talk about their special take on certain aspects, on visuals, aesthetics, on the new storytelling, whatever they want to share. Of course, we curate that a bit, but it is an unobserved space. We don't stream the keynotes. We don't even record them. So it's really a space where I think everybody is willing to share a bit more, because we are not observed, we are not evaluated. It's our space, our time. It's just between us. So the first 2 days, as said, is knowledge transfer. And there's another aspect which turned out to be very interesting. So there is no introduction of the participants. So we don't make this usual round that everybody says, hey, my name is, and I'm coming from, and then that's my profession, and I won these beautiful awards. We skip that. So everybody knows who will be mentor in the lab, because we published them already on our website, but nobody knows who will be participant in the lab. And we only offer plates with the first name. And that was good, because, you know, you can imagine, we had somebody who never had any experience in VR, coming from, let's say, screenwriting, that I find it so incredibly interesting, but I have no clue what's going on here. And in the same group, we had somebody who already worked in VR, was one of the directors for VR for Good, and had a piece at Tribeca. So there is a lot of different entry levels, and I don't want to be people being intimidated or getting shy, that can happen very, very easily. And as nobody has an own project on board, there was no competition. So as soon as you bring your own project, you have a baby on board and you want to get the best coaching and the best steps forward. And you're in a competition, if you like it or not, you will be in a competition if you bring your project in a lab. So we don't have that. We opened also for a speaker's corner in the evening. So the lab starts at 9 in the morning and ends at 8 in the evening. So it's really long hours. And after that, people can conquer the stage and use technology, whatever's here, to share what they want to share. And that was another, that's every year, it's an epiphany moment. Who's there in the lab with incredible experience and wonderful wisdom to share. So we learned a lot about LARP playing and storytelling, for example. in Norway or from a Norwegian participant, which is still in my head. We also offer hands-on workshops during these first 2 days. That's a part, I think we had 5 or 6 2-hour workshops parallelly. So you need to decide on location very spontaneously what you want to join. And you can't get it all because we have, you know, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 4 workshops, 4 times in total, but 6 different workshops. So you need to make a decision. That's on purpose because we said there are so many technologies and so many aspects. And we want to give an insight. You don't learn Unity in 2 hours, of course not. You don't learn how to film 360 in 2 hours, of course not. But if you're interested in that and you don't know what Unity is, you can learn in 2 hours what Unity can do for you or what it is in general. Or our mentors and experts are flexible enough that they can take the participants from the level they are entering. So I recall that there was already a motion capture workshop in 2 hours just popping out because the participants wanted to do that. So that's the educational part, and it's very liquid, though it's a bit curated. And of course, I need to invite the experts. And, well, we need a bit of that technology. We need to focus on this end. We have always audio implemented somehow. We will implement artificial intelligence, of course, in the next lab, which is a massive player in VR. Meanwhile, so. The first 2 days, you learn the other 50 participants by name. You learn in hands-on workshops a bit of technology, and you learn from keynotes and case studies your mentors and what's out there. That's a lot. It's a massive, inspiring 2-day marathon. And on day 3, we step to ideation. So during the first 2 days, we already start to introduce what's going on from Wednesday to Friday. So the idea is create an idea, and we split up in teams, and you will create through the last 3 days with your team a prototype. And try to figure out or try to represent what you want to create. That sounds very abstract, but what's happening is then that we got 50, 60, 70 ideas on our pin walls. And then we had a market of ideas, and then it concentrated, and the teams were built very quickly on Wednesday morning. And we just have an eye on if the mentors, they are completely free to join the teams, what they want to do. But we keep an eye on that the teams have the skills they really need. So if they want to do something with motion capture, they need somebody who is capable to help them technically, or to have somebody who has the equipment, or we help them with the equipment. That's the moment I lose control over the lab. Because as soon as the teams are built, they are, it's like in a beehive, you know, they fly out, they work in teams, they are super, super eager to do something together. And on Friday afternoon, we have the presentation of the prototypes. And it's all, as said, it's non-public, it's just us on that space, and telling each other what did we try to achieve, what was the way, the journey, what was the failures, what was good, what didn't work out, and here's the piece. I find it super interesting. In average, we had 7 teams, 7 projects, and in average, we had 3 projects that survived the lab and had an afterlife and were developed further on. So we said, you don't come with a project and we don't expect any results. This is something to learn and to collaborate here and to learn, of course, make friends in an international environment, because where's the space where you can meet so many people from different cultures and languages and backgrounds? And of course, you make friends in that space. Some of these projects got funding. They were developed further. Some of them has been realized. Some of them made it to the, what I call the contemporary lab, is the Biennale College Cinema VR, because it's funded by the European Union as well. And this is a lab for projects in an advanced development state. And in Venice, you get, it's a wonderful workshop. I only can recommend, if you have a project, to apply there. It's really, it's a great workshop, but it's for your project then. And one of our projects ran through the College Cinema VR workshop and had a premiere at Venice in 2019, which is really amazing for a workshop project. Maybe we switch to the next slide to make it a bit more interesting. This was the first class, the class of 2017, and you see there's so many people. In front you see Brett Leonard, who is director, Hollywood director in, if you have seen The Lawnmower Man in the 90s, he is the one who directed The Lawnmower Man. And Virtuosity was the title of the second one. So he was dealing with virtual reality in his movies in the 90s already, and is one of the digital 25 of Hollywood. Next slide, please. It's just a few inspirations, because we didn't make any movie in the lab, no moving pictures, to give you an idea what it looked like. So, you know, people work together like in a summer class. Next slide, please. That was the class of 2019, where we moved the lab to the Academy of Fine Arts in that beautiful space. Next slide, please. That was in the Academy, some inspirational pictures. And it's the same principle, again, keep them together, let them talk together. And the curation is really to bring the right people together, I think, and to provide, as an organizer, the space, the protection, and an environment where they can really act and grow. And that's the whole secret. Next slide, please. From 2018 on, we had a second lab called the Booster Lab, because we said, okay, there is a development lab, but now we see the ecosystem is growing in Europe, and there are more and more projects growing, and we need to work more on the business model side, on the strategy side, on the presentation, and help, pretty much like the first movie program, to be honest, help projects tailor-made individually to work on their presentation and to get access to the markets and get access to the networks. So we collaborated with VR Days in Amsterdam, which is a very big event in Amsterdam in November. We provided, or Benjamin de Witt, who is the festival director, provided space. There's a space called Dansmaker Space. That's really a huge stage. And we invited 2 projects. The lab was in July, so we invited 2 projects with the international teams to Amsterdam in November to work further on the projects. And what's happening there is they had 3 days they could use the space, meet with their European colleagues again, and of course get tons of feedback of the international experts, because VR Days is a hotspot of storytelling experts, keynote speakers, technology, business. So they had hundreds testing their experiences and their prototypes, and they could make friends with all these international experts and get the feedback to iterate and re-implement it into their project. Next, please. So this is in 2019, the European Creators Lab. That's last mood to just to give you a bit of a feeling what it was like. I want to have that class photo because that's the one moment in the beginning, day one of the lab. They all stand still together. As said, after a while, I lose control over the lab because everybody is working on the project. So if you want to stay tuned with the lab, there's next slide, please. Why did I make that slide? That's a funny one. There's a Facebook group for the European Creators Lab, and the name is the same. So if you join us, you will be posted, you will kept posted about the next calls, but also I try to post as many calls for projects, fundings, festivals, and so on. Whatever I think might be interesting for creators and artists, I try to post that all in that group. Might be interesting. Next slide, please. So talking about the infrastructure, what grew in Bavaria meanwhile. So remember, we had the community, we had the meetups. We started with, discovering who is doing VR at all in our environment, and discovered there's a startup working in the field of remote workplace. When we discovered there is scientists already working there in the Technical University or in the Leibniz Supercomputing Center. We discovered there are artists working. And there were a moment where I said, they're all hiding behind the bushes. We need to figure out who is here working in that immersive technologies already. So we started to think about an association. That's a very German hobby, I think. As soon as we want to connect, we found an association. So there's one called Extended Reality Bavaria. But the advantage is that there is a board, there is a web page, there are people who try to organize events. If you're new in the field and you want to connect or to network or to start to collaborate, this is one of those institutions you can just address to and say, okay, who in this association can help me? And we have a lot of associations all over Germany. I think in nearly each region you will find VR, XR associations. In Berlin, Sönke will be here, Sönke Kirchhoff. The next days, I guess, he is a massive community builder and I think part of the Berlin association, but also there is a all over German association. So these are good moments, and this is something we need in Germany. I don't know, how do you do it here? If you want to stay together, but it's good to find a form where, and maybe a landing page or something where people can address to and find you if they have any questions. The next slide, please. The association has also built some clusters. So in the beginning of when we started in 2014 to think about VR, could you change the slide, please? Then we just connected with everything VR, whatever it is. VR was the headline. And during the last 5 years, it was really turning out that it's not everything VR. Meanwhile, you find that VR, AR, XR is in every field in our lives, in every cluster, and so the association is working in clusters as well. So if you're working in the field of education, there's somebody who's an expert in that, and you can address to that person directly, or health and medical and automotive or whatever. Next slide, please. The XR Hub Bavaria has been built in October 2019, and that is again a governmental institution or funded by the Ministry for Digital Affairs. And the XR Hub Bavaria has 3 locations, one in Munich, one in Würzburg, and one in Nuremberg, all 3 in Bavaria. And they have the task to network, to share knowledge and expertise, to be, you know, the first, also a place you can address to if you need help or expertise or advice, and where you can connect and collaborate in Bavaria first, in prior, but of course, they are networking internationally as well, because XR has no borders. So if you think XR, you need to think global, in my opinion. That brings me also to the funding in Bavaria. When we go to the next slide, please. I want to talk a bit more about the Film Fancy Fund in Bavaria, because I know that better, but you know that Germany has a federal structure, meaning that there is a governmental support and there is a regional support. We have 16 regions, and some of them have XR funding, some of them have film funding. So each region has its own rules, and what you need to know is if you want to get that money or access to that money, you need a producer that is capable to apply for that money, and you need to spend that money in that region. So talking about the FFF, they have, it's a film fund, as said, in first instance. They already have a game, a very big game funding as well. And they started virtual reality in 2017. And I just wanted to show you the difference, or also the transition from 2017, where they have, they say they fund immersive content, immersive audiovisual projects, for example, narrative virtual reality or 360-degree content, which is an attempt to describe VR from the perspective of a filmmaker. And since 2019, there is another funding track called XR funding for innovative XR formats. And if you read here, the projects for XR applications with high quality content, creative, and especially with regard to the user experience, innovative projects for XR applications can be supported, and so on. So what we really tried to achieve, and we were successful in that, is to keep the funding tech agnostic and to keep it as open as possible. So we were wondering, what is with all the arts projects that are interactive, maybe location-based, maybe with performative elements, where would they get their funding from? Not, of course, from the immersive audiovisual content. So we wanted to have a funding that is more open to different formats, and formats we don't even know today, because that's fast-growing experimental medium that changes a lot during the times. And that brings me back to the next page, please. The next slide. That brings me back to my original slide, saying that what is the pillars of an infrastructure, and this is exactly what a village for the XR creators would look like, a perfect village. So where you find all these pillars and all these individuals working in several fields. I hope I could encourage you to start or to grow your community. As you see that I am not an expert in that field, and I started very naively in the beginning, just out of passion and out of interest. And as long as you work or do something out of interest, I think you're on the right track anyway. So we grew in that. It was not a master plan in 2014. Hey, let's do something, and then in 2019 we will have a festival and will have an international lab. No, it started very, very small, and it was mutually developed in the community, on location with the locals together. In an organic way, and it grew into what it was then, or what it is now. So that means that what I want to say is that your ecosystem might look different and might grow different and might need different players, or have different access to money, or different access to science, or whatever. It might not look or will not look the same, I think. But the pillars you will need, no matter in what media you're working, will stay the same, I think. So that's it from my end. And on the last page, you see, if you want to know my contact details, if you want to get in touch with me. So thank you for listening, and I'm open for questions now.
Thank you, Astrid, very inspiring. Yeah, it's so cool that you do it with the government. It's excellent. It's dreamily for us. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Yeah, we have no questions, but we haven't the time for questions because now it's 3 hours.
It's late anyway.
Thank you so much. We are trying to make our society too. Yeah.
So keep the fire burning, and I think all the people. I saw your lineup. Everybody who's talking here will be, me included, of course, will be happy to support you if you need anything, or if you want to know more, or if you get in touch. As said, if you want to email me, do that. If you join the European Creators Lab Facebook page or group, come and feel invited. And I said it takes a village to raise a kid. Nobody can do VR on his or her own. It's really very complex, it's time consuming, it's expensive, and there is not a really good business model inside for now. And governmental support is not given for granted.
Yeah.
So that can change very quickly. So thank you. Yeah. And good to know that you're so active. Keep the fire burning. Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye.
Have a good day. Yeah.
You too.